something like that. That the other players don't know. So for that reason, I would ask that you, not that you call them the moments, but don't want to stream during. But yeah, so that's what that would be for folks after the chat. But I will not have set in there, so we can go straight to watch after that's fine. Okay, so are we ready to go? All right, let's get started. There's music starting, so feel free to turn it down if you need to. Adjust at your comfort by right-clicking GroovyBot and turning it down. Welcome to the continent of Esau. Founded exactly 300 years before this moment in time. The Luthean dynasty, an ancient elven clan, first landed on Esau those 300 years ago with dreams of discovery and adventure. They settled into the land and formed a small settlement that they called Elowin. Elowin was named after an elven goddess who is the mother of all creation. The continent of Esau, with its rich resources and precious gems, coal, ore, diamonds, to name a few, was prime for this dynasty. Much of the land was fertile, and soon the Luthean clan was thriving and multiplying. Their small settlement of Elwyn became a town, then a city, and soon other elven families followed, and then many other races. The Luthean dynasty became revered, wealthy, and powerful, and further settled into the land, and spread across the continent. Elwyn became a large capital metropolis, and a monarchy was established, ruled by this powerful family who discovered this vast land. And as more settlers came, more cities, towns, and villages spread across the land and thrived on the rich resources they found. 5 territories were soon established, 5 distinct territories on Esau, all under the rule of the Luthean monarchs, the founders and discoverers of the great land of Esau. There was, however, one problem. You see, the Luthians did not exactly discover Esau. Esau was already inhabited, quite inconveniently, by many, many indigenous tribes. Goliaths, barbarians, dwarves, giants, goblins, wild elves, and kobolds, among other beings, had been well established in Esau for hundreds, if not thousands of years. But no. This inconvenient fact did not faze Luthians, who ruthlessly colonized the land throughout the years. And they pushed these uncivilized races to the outer edges of the continent, the less habitable wilds. While most of the tribes struggled in the harsh wilderness, some thrived and formed and established independent societies, which still exist to this day. The Luthean dynasty ruled for hundreds of years, and as rulers, they were wholly incapable, leading hedonistic and decadent lives while ignoring the inequality and suffering of the many people within their kingdom, struggling, and the struggling tribes in the harsh and unforgiving wilds. So 50 years before our adventure begins, Esau was on the brink of civil war. The tribes had begun cooperating to raise an army to attack Elowin and to overthrow the Luthians. The beings who lived within the castle walls were angry at the inequality suffering, and a resistance was forming. However, disaster was averted through diplomacy, strategy, and compromise. Trusted individuals from the 5 territories of Esau came together and presented the civil war by negotiating with the Luthians to step out of power, while promising that the family would keep their royal titles and wealth, but would have no power over the people. Representatives visited the more powerful tribes and convinced them to stand down, with the promise of land and compensation. And a government was put in place, a democratic government, each territory represented by 2 elected officials, barons, while the larger territory was represented by representatives, and there was an elected High Lord who ruled / governed over it all. The old tribes are represented today by an ambassador in the government who represents their interests, while also being given their freedom and autonomy to live their lives and cultures without interference, in an agreement that stands to this day. So where are we now? We start off in the southern and coastal city of Ardenborn. Not quite a city, but a small town, which is known mostly for its festival of limitless waters. It's a yearly celebration where townspeople boat and swim and drink locally brewed beer and even feast on roasted fish. A reminder that the gifts that the water brings them are precious, and to remember a storm that tore through town 50 years ago, destroying most of the crops and the buildings. Ardenborn is a small community built around a shipwreck, and nobody seems to know how the ship got there. Legend says that a giant storm caught the ship and it was lifted out of the sea. Others say it was a giant wave, but either way, nobody knows. The original sailors had obviously angered some god. And today, the ship that rose is fashioned into a government building. And pieces of ship are used for the houses and the stores and on the market. Our group today has managed to find passage on a caravan to this festival, and all week you've been eating cotton candy and fish and popcorn and drinking beer and having fun. This group of travelers who know each other loosely have been having a grand old time in Ardenborn, enjoying the festivities. Phineas was lucky to get his passage paid for by his kind friend Irene, who was happy to bring him along this year, as this is the type of festival that he would normally never get to go to. You all were talked into by some of your fellow festival goers entering the grand champion of the Festival of Limitless Waters, Grand Championship. This multi-day championship featured feats of strength and dexterity and intelligence. And over 50 teams competed. But now, you all are one of the last teams left. And with one other team, you are in the finals. And you and this team are about to head off. The prize, 25 gold pieces. The excitement is building as the 2 final teams for the grand championship of the festival of limitless waters has begun. The ringmaster gets up and he speaks to the crowd. Welcome, festival goers. He has a megaphone that is a large open cone. Surprisingly, it magnifies his voice rather well. He starts with the other team. And may I welcome our first team to the Festival of Limitless Waters Grand Champion. The crowd goes wild. Ah! And he introduces the team one by one by one by one. The first 4 members of the team get a good applause, but the last member of the team, the crowd goes crazy. As the ringmaster goes to each member of the team, he gives them all the megaphone to introduce themselves. And when he gets to the last member, he takes the megaphone. It's a large and burly dwarf, and he speaks into the megaphone. He says, I am Tobias Stormgate. The crowd goes wild. This is the grand champion of last year. They know who he is. And he looks at his competitors. Ha ha ha. These competitors are no match for me. We have a puny human, 2 puny humans, and we also have, we have one guy that looks kind of muscular, but whatever. And then we have another dwarf who could be okay, but whatever. They're outnumbered. The ringmaster takes the megaphone away and he says, okay, next let's move on. And he hands the megaphone to Ramune. How do you want to present yourself?
Ramune, he just kind of stands up. He just smiles. He's like, hi. Anyone know where the snack bar is?
The ringmaster takes the phone and said, that was interesting. Very handsome competitor. And all of a bunch of women and men in the crowd all scream and clutch their pearls.
Ramune just kind of grabs the back of his head and the tuft of his hair. He's like, well, I don't know about handsome, but I appreciate the compliment. And he kind of throws his arm up, waves to everyone.
And the crowd just cheers. You hear screams from men and women, maybe a few more women, but definitely men too. And just much louder applause than the other competitors. Okay, and who is this fine dwarf? Oh, wait, no. This isn't a dwarf. Oh, here you go. This tall man here. He gives the megaphone to Cypress. You might be muted. Cypress, how do you want to present yourself?
Oh, yeah, I was muted. Cypress will take the megaphone and he'll say, hi, I'm Cypress Duskweave, and I am recovered from a debilitating back injury, so I'm not sure how I got talked into this, but I'm going to do my best. And then he'll give it back.
He takes the megaphone back and he says, that's all you can do is do your best. Good job, boy. He claps you on the back. Oh, sorry. Injury.
I'll wince and I'll smile at him.
He says, yeah, sorry. And then he whispers, please don't sue me. I don't have insurance. Honest mistake. Okay, next. Let's see. Okay, this fine and strapping dwarf. Here you go. He gives it to Toren.
Alright, so Toren's no stranger to competition, so he announces in a very booming voice, I can't really do this voice very well, but did you know who Ric Flair is?
Yes.
Oh God.
Imagine he sounds like Ric Flair.
Okay.
Woo!
Yeah, he just lets out a big woo and starts introducing himself. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Toren, and I have come to win the championship in this fine town of yours. And to my fellow competitor, and he points right over to the storm gate, and it's like, you say you're better than me, huh? Well, to be the man, you gotta be the man. And I'm right here. Pal. Let's see what you got.
Stormgage does a little flex and is like, ha! And he just flexes, does like a Mr. Olympian flex, several poses. Little embarrassing, a little awkward. Nobody really knows how to react to that. And the ringmaster takes the microphone. Thank you very much. And, you, okay. And he hands the thing to Phineas.
It's Phineas is this human boy in very raggedy, dirty clothes. His legs are shaking and his hair is almost brown with dirt. And he goes, "I don't know how I got here. This kind of got talked into it. Please don't kill me."
And he says, "Well, you look wiry, so maybe you can run. I don't know. Okay, well, good luck." Yeah. Next, we have this lovely lady here. Here you go. And gives the microphone to Irene.
As Irene takes her mic, you see her roll her shoulders back coolly, and the muscles in her neck bulge. She gives a smile to her opponents and the crowd, and you hear her boldly declare, "Although violence is rarely my chosen means to an end, in the spirit of a friendly competition, it will be the means of your end. I'm looking forward to a fun challenge." And she kind of leans over to Phineas and says, gives him a friendly elbow. "Don't worry, I'll take care of you, my boy."
I can't wait for the experience.
And he says, "Very, very good. Okay, well, shall we get started, crowd?" And the crowd screams. You notice several things in this large arena. You have some bullseyes that have been used for archery. You've been doing these competitions for all week now. There's a large wrestling ring. There's a kind of like a cache of different items that you need for the competition. So there are axes for axe throwing. There are little swords for fencing. There's shields for jousting. And so that is here where I just clicked. And so the first competition, he announces, for this finalist is going to be the axe throwing. I need 3 volunteers as tributes. And he looks at your team. The axe throwing competition is death.
Dex?
Yes.
I have a 14 in Dex.
Sure. I'll give it a shot. I've never thrown an axe before. Can't be that hard. And Ramune will step forward.
Who is the first person who said it? Sorry, I'm not 100% familiar with the voices. I wasn't looking at the screen yet at that time.
Who was the first one? I said I have Dex. I don't know if anybody else wants to volunteer themselves.
I'll give Brandon a pat on the back and say, "Go ahead, Brandon. It's non-combative. I'm sure you'll do excellently."
Phineas.
Sorry, Brandon. Phineas.
Did Phineas even lift the axe?
I'll give it a shot, I guess.
Okay. Feel free to move yourself to the target over here. And so I think that'll be the easier way. So we have Ramune, we have Phineas. Irene is not doing this. Cypress?
Cypress will step up and say, I guess I can do this without hurting my back too much.
Okay. All right, so we have our 3 volunteers. So Phineas kind of takes a bow and pulls back and shoots the arrow at the bullseye. These are all flat rolls. There are no modifiers at this time. So flat roll.
Flat dex rolls?
Yes.
Would you like us to go
it's a throwing axe, though, not a bow, right?
Say it again?
It's a throwing axe, though, not a bow.
Are we doing a bow, or did I say
You
axe?
said
Sorry,
hand
axe.
axe there.
Axe. All right. Okay. And I said axe, right?
Yes, you said hand axe.
Hand axe. Sorry about that. Okay. I have too many things on my mind. Okay. So you take the axe, pull it back, throw it, and it doesn't miss the target, but it hits on the outside of the target. And next we have Ramune.
Doesn't seem so hard. Whoosh. Oh, ooh. He got an 8.
Okay. And it goes a little bit closer than Phineas is, kind of in like the 3rd ring. Doesn't quite hit the bullseye though. The announcer looks up and says, "All right, our 3rd contestant."
You got this, Cypress.
That's a lot harder than it looks.
Okay. Let me...
And throws it in, it just nails the bullseye absolutely in the middle. I mean, just almost splits the target with the force thrown behind it so accurately, and the crowd goes insane, and everybody is screaming your name and just going off. The other team looks a little bit salty, especially Tobias, and he's just like, beginner's luck. And they quickly have a few people throw from their team. One completely misses the bullseye, almost actually takes someone out in the audience. He manages to duck just in the nick of time. The second one, right outside the bullseye, and Tobias kind of looks in this like, ha! Knowing that he's the last one, and obviously he's going to be the one to nail it. He takes the axe, pulls it back, and he's so distracted with making fun of you all that he accidentally releases the axe too early, and it clings off of the side and doesn't even go into the target. And he says, "Who can work with all this noise distracting me?" And the crowd just kind of like golf clap. The ringmaster pulls out his megaphone and says, "Okay, our second competition." And he looks at you and he says, "Let's do," and he kind of thinks about it and he says, "wrestling.
Oh.
Who will volunteer?" Tobias steps up immediately.
I step up right in front of Tobias as well.
He looks at you and he's like, Okay, Irene steps up. Competitor steps up to her.
All right, Toren, let's show them what we're made of, right?
Oh, I have to wait to punch that smoke frickin' face.
Do we need 3 again?
Yes, we need 3.
Come on, scrawny boy, get your butt up here. Let's see what you're made of.
Come on, Phineas, you can do it.
Well, I guess I'll give it a shot.
Well,
And
definitely
Tobias
hurt my back.
and Tobias looks at the groups and says, they cheated. And he says, that one at the end should have gone against me. It's only fair.
What?
And the ringmaster says, and the ringmaster looks at him and just shakes his head and says, no. This is a fair competition. And he says, whoever challenges you.
I walk right up to Stormgate, like, so you saying I'm not worth the effort, huh?
And he says, I didn't say that. Whatever. Let's go.
I poke him right on the chest. It's like, oh, I'm gonna look forward to this.
And he kind of like puffs out his chest back out. He's like, ha! I wouldn't hire you to shine my armor. Ha ha ha. And he steps into the ring. Which he is not wearing armor, by the way, despite the little token that I used. Ignore that. Okay? So, can always find the perfect thing. Alright, so the ringmaster once again announces your names, and we are going to do contested strength. So go ahead and roll for strength.
Okay. Pow. Oh, picked the wrong thing.
Oh.
Oh, okay. So
Act like a mother.
So Tobias seems to have been pretty angry at your taunting him, and it just makes the adrenaline course through him, and he kind of gets a little bit of a head start, but he gets the right angle, and he's able to take you down immediately, and he holds you down into submission pretty quickly, and the referee, 1, 2, 3, and Tobias puts his hands up and says, ha ha ha, no one should ever face me. And he like does this little like victory pelvic thrust dance kind of out of the ring. And the ringmaster looks and says, okay, let's keep it PG, kids. And he says, okay, group number 2. And the second person and Irene enter the match.
You got this, Irene.
Yeah, I get him.
You got this, girl.
I've locked eyes dead with her, but I'm still giving her a warm smile.
She seems a little taken aback by that you seem to be so not aggressive, considering that you're just about to do. And so she smiles back and she just kind of shakes her head and gives you a thumbs up.
And nod right back. Okay, so.
Okay. And so, again, probably a little bit distracted in a different way, but your kindness that she can feel has kind of put her guard down, and she doesn't want to go too hard. And you kind of quickly and easily get control of her, but being Irene, this is not like a match to the death. You hold her down. The referee, 1, 2, 3, and Irene wins. The crowd goes wild. Oh!
I'll give her a hand to stand back up and get out of the ring.
She takes your hand and she kind of bows, and you both step out the ring. Okay, and last group.
Oh. Again, please don't kill me.
And the competitor looks and says, I can't promise that, but it'll be quick. All right. Contested strength. So, the two competitors go at it and are dancing around each other and are one pins the other, but then the other gets up, and the other pins the other, and then the other gets up, and it goes on and on and on in circles and circles and circles. It seems to be a bit of a stalemate almost. Phineas, what is your dexterity?
14.
Okay, so at the last minute, or not the last minute, but after a while, Phineas manages to make a super quick and dexterous move, and he takes the competitor's feet out from under him, ending the stalemate, pinning him, and 1, 2, 3, Phineas wins. The crowd screams with excitement. Ah! Everybody is very excited.
I just laid down on the ground. I'm down here. I'm exhausted.
I know you had it in you.
The other competitor is just like, and he's like breathing so hard as you all kind of, I'm going to say, not limp, but kind of trudge out of the ring, clearly exhausted. This match took a lot longer than the others did.
Well,
the ringmaster. Oh, go ahead.
Way to go, Twinkle Toes. That was awesome. And Ramune just smacks him on the
Don't
back.
touch me. I'm exhausted. I'm so sore.
I was like, yeah, get used to it. A Bill's character.
Wise words from a dwarf who would know, by the way. Definitely.
Ramune pulls out a notebook and he's just kind of like, now, do tell. Did you learn that kind of fighting while on the streets as a peasant? Is this normal? Ramune writes down, interesting.
On, stop interrogating the board.
Okay, so the ringmaster takes the megaphone and he quiets the cheering crowd and he says, "Okay, we are ready for the very last competition, a tug of war." And everyone cheers, and this is always the final competition for the Festival of Limitless Waters. There's a pool of water in the middle, because Limitless Waters, which is not visible, by the way, but let's pretend it's right here. Okay, so everybody line yourselves up in the order that you would like to go, starting in this square that I've just clicked on, please. Let's go first. Let's go anchor. They will also line themselves up.
Oh.
No.
Of course, Tobias insists on being the anchor. Okay. All right. So the let me check something real quick. There we go. Okay. The ringmaster takes out the megaphone and he says, 1, 2, 3. Everybody roll strength, please.
Oh.
Ooh.
Okay, and let's go.
I may have prayed to my various gods for that nat 20 there.
Said a silent prayer, right? Maybe out loud. Okay. Okay, so you all start to pull, and the other team pulls. Your feet are being dragged closer to the pool of water, but then you get the advantage, and then you start to pull back, and their feet are dragged towards the pool of water. Your heels digging into the dirt. All of a sudden, there is a huge clap of thunder. A blue light flashes before your eyes, and time seems to stop. The blue light is centered right in the middle of your group. And time stands still around you. Phineas. You hear the crackling sound, and then you feel it, and it's moving through your whole body. It's like a tingle, and it's getting louder and louder until a large crack, but you feel power within you. And you feel a pull, but it's hard to verbalize because the pull isn't moving you physically, but mentally. You feel a pull on the other side of the arena, and then you hear an indistinct whispering. But you can't make out the words. And you feel a hand, and it wraps its fingers slowly around you, but you can't see it. The hand is gentle. As you feel the fingers, one by one by one by one, wrapping around your body. An invisible hand has taken you in, and you feel as if you're floating. The hand gently raises you in the air, and then it lowers you to the ground, and then it opens up as if to guide you, but physically you're not moving, but you feel the sensation. And then all of a sudden you feel another electric jolt through your system like a shock. Come to the private room for me for a second, please.
Okay.
Well,
Guys, these whispers are brought to you by D&D Beyond. Not a sponsor, but boy howdy would I wish they were if I didn't already own their content.
Right?
okay then.
We are not a strong party.
No, we aren't.
But we are very lucky.
Yeah, that nat 20 probably was the lifeline for us.
I was thinking of when Phineas was in the ring. It seemed like he was going toe-to-toe, but he had the higher deck, so he was able to make it out.
Yeah.
Okay. Irene. You feel centered, connected, at peace. You feel more connected to your spiritual self than you ever felt before. And you look at your hands, the back of your hands, and there's a warmth in those hands, and there's a soft yellow glow. And you feel life. And then the warmth spreads slowly down your body like a fond memory of when you were a child. Sipping tea with your mother, playing games of hopscotch and chess with the neighborhood kids your age, being lifted onto your father's shoulders and screaming with excitement and joy. This warmth is so potent that you can actually hear it. It reverberates and you feel at peace. You feel the power of another being that you've never known, and it's reaching to you. You feel the power, and it whispers in your head. It's kind and warm like a blanket. And it says to you, "My child Irene, my child, you are a sweet, compassionate soul. And for that, my child, I am glad you found me, and now I found you. And now, my daughter, you will walk with me, and I will guide you." This voice is not unpleasant. It's kind and it's welcoming. And you feel strong and free. And you feel at peace. Toren, your body starts shaking and your muscles start to spasm. You feel these strange and uncomfortable spasms rushing through your body, but they don't knock you over. They don't knock you off your feet. They feel weird, like a soreness when you've been lifting barrels of hay and barrels of items and goods as a dwarf and swinging an axe. You can feel them reverberating through your body, and you feel a rush of air in your lungs. And it feels good, and then it pushes its way back out again coolly, out of your nose and mouth, and you feel as if you're lifted off the ground, but you do not move. This air leaves you feeling light and spry and healthy and full of energy. And even as a dwarf, you feel somehow more limber than you've ever have and light on your feet, as if you could move with fluidity and ease. And then you feel it. The spasms stop and your muscles start to ripple. And you can see them changing ever so slightly. Corded muscles start to form on your arms. And the cords go up your arms and you can see them. And then you can feel them underneath your shirt. And you feel strong. And even in your clothing and boots, you feel light on your body. And you feel strong. Cypress. You feel the burn of the sun on your face, but it doesn't actually hurt. It disappears and you feel the biting cold of the wind. And you smell the herbaceous aroma of grass and the clay of the earth. And you feel the light dew dancing across your face like a gentle breeze. And every part of your body feels like a balmy spring day. The spring is as the spring that you remember as a child, where you ran with other children across the fields of flowers in the vast beyond where you grew up. A warm green light glows around you. You hear rain, then wind, then the ambience of animals in the woods, and a raging storm, then lightning, then thunder. Then you feel grains of dirt running through your fingers like a sieve. You can't explain it, but you feel connected to the natural world. All of a sudden, you feel like a new person. Your mind is racing. And you're back. The constant pain seems to lift away. You're back. It's mending itself, and your injuries seem to be leaving your body. It's as if a dial is being turned, and you feel them lifting away. And the sun, it speaks to you, and the moon, it speaks to you, and you feel connected. Ramune, you feel light on your feet. And before you could even control it or think, you are shifting your weight from one foot to another with grace and agility, and you feel as if you can run 100 miles, and your senses heighten to an unnatural degree, and everything is magnified 1,000 times. Sight, hearing, touch, and smell. It's a sensory overload. The lightness on your feet feels intoxicating. The energy flows through your body, and your body feels something's wrong. Something's wrong. Very wrong. Something's wrong. A wave of nausea overtakes your body, and it folds in half, and you retch so hard that it throws you forward. Ugh. And the contents of your stomach empty out on the arena ground. And your body starts to feel heavy and stag like 100-pound weight. And then you lose control of your senses momentarily, and you fall on the ground with a thud. And your body seizes up like iron, like a vice grip, and you can't move, and it releases. And you feel as if your insides are falling out. Something is wrong. The sensation is indescribable, uncontrollable, and horrifying, but you can't scream. You can't control your mouth, your eyes, your ears, nothing. You want to scream, but you can't. And suddenly your face feels strange, as if your skin is separating from your body. You hear a crackle. You feel a searing pain, and it stops. And you feel as if you're melting. Your skin feels as if it's slowly falling off your body, and you feel pain. And it feels so painful. And then you feel light, and then you feel pain and light and pain and light and pain and light and pain and light, and then it goes away. And then you feel no longer sick. You feel normal, but something is off. Something is off. You hear a horrified scream from the crowd, as if it's the only thing you can hear. Oh, dear God, what's happening to that man? All of a sudden, you all snap back into consciousness, and the stadium is going wild. People are running and screaming, and you see that the lightning somehow has destroyed parts of the stadium. Some people have been crushed under rock, and they're trying to be pulled out. There has been several boulders that have fallen in front of the entrance to the stadium, and so you all can't get out. You're trapped. The ringmaster has been hit with a rock, and although he's in the stadium, he seems to be injured, and people are trying to pull him out, and people are screaming. People are pointing at Ramune and screaming. Everybody is going absolutely chaotic. And your competitors, one of them has completely been obliterated. It's as if he's exploded. And his sword has clanged next to him. And it's by his side. The rest of your competitors seem to be just discombobulated and out of their minds. And you can see them, and they're shaking their heads, and their eyes are all going kind of wild. And their mouths are foaming. And they look at you, and they move towards you menacingly, not seeming to hear anything that anyone from the crowd is saying as they tell them to stop, as they all set upon you. Roll for initiative, please. And now you have all of your abilities. Click your token first, please.
So as they're advancing, I'll just say, now I know this is all quite discombobulating and confusing, but there's no need to be rash or get out of hand now, alright?
What the fuck happened?
No response. None whatsoever. They don't seem to hear you. They don't seem to even be looking at you. Their eyes are unfocused. And they continue to advance. Give me 1 second.
Irene, I don't think they're in the right state of mind right now.
Oh man.
Okay. So, the first competitor approaches Toren, and he does not have any weapons in his hands, and he makes a fist and punches at Toren. And let me get that out. Wrong one. There we go. Okay, punches at Toren. And he punches wild and just barely scrapes for 4 bludgeoning right in the side of the head. That's his turn. Cypress.
Cypress will look confused, but want to stop what's his team from getting hurt. So he'll just point at the guy who hit him, and will happen to cast Create Bonfire.
Okay.
Which is a DC 14 dex save for
Dex
1 damage.
The bonfire, he happens to kind of sidestep and avoid the fire. Does not take damage.
Okay.
Anything else for you?
And that'll be my turn, yeah.
All right, Irene.
Alright, looking at the table, are there any, is there by chance a warhammer on the table?
There is. Mm-hmm. There are hammers for like hammer throws that are there, yeah. So there's a bunch of stuff there.
Okay, so I would want to grab I will grab a warhammer, and I'd like to ready an action for anyone who comes close to try and do a Just, kind of sweep them, aim for the knees, that kind of situation.
Okay.
So I'd end up, right here.
Ready the action? Okay. So if someone attacks you or one of your teammates, that's when you'll attack, right?
Yeah.
Or throw the hammer at them? Got it. Okay. Toren.
Alright, so Tori's just gonna be looking at this like, alright, you threw first bullet, shit's on. So he's gonna back up. Yeah, he's gonna back up to here, risking attack of opportunity.
Okay. You roll hit. And as you move away, he punches at you. And the punch goes wide. He's not really paying attention. He was more focused on what just happened with the fire. Go ahead.
Alright. I'm gonna pull out my bow. And I'm just gonna be like, alright, sorry, pal, but I'm gonna shoot him in the ankle.
Okay. Yep, definitely hits. Okay. And it does a direct hit right into his ankle. The shot was very accurate, and he just and he clutches his ankle as blood goes gushing out, and he doesn't seem to be really aware of the injury. He's just aware of the pain. He's not intellectually aware that he's been injured. He's merely reacting to the pain. So, all right. And next we have Ramune.
I take it I am a puddle on the ground currently.
You are not a puddle. You are what you are.
Ramune begins to form. Uh-oh, what did I do? Everything just went black.
Delete your token.
Why don't you keep it as it is? We'll change it. It's because of the dark. It's because of the what's it called?
Advanced lighting. That's why. Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry. Go ahead.
Dynamic lighting. Yeah.
Can you throw me back on there then? That explains it. I was like,
sure.
I was going to switch out my token. I already got the sheet updated. I deleted it, and everything went black.
Hold on, I actually may have this ready to go. Let's try it. Okay, let me. You know what? I'm gonna try this. I'm gonna do this. I think we can make this work. Oh no, don't have it yet. Okay, we'll get to that in a second. Okay.
Well, that's fine. I can see again. I'm going to go over to this amalgamation of greenish, bluish, slime-like material is going to go over to the table. I'm going to grab some short swords, longbow, and an arrow. And I'm looking around confused, but I'm arming myself to defend myself, as I'm not really certain what just happened. My instincts are kicking in to just protect myself. So I am just going to be holding an attack action. Short swords if someone gets nearby, or longbow if someone looks like they're charging at me.
Okay, I think I might have figured this out, so let me try this real quick. So this is what you all see. Do you have sight?
Yes, I do.
Okay, this is what you all see.
It's a slime thingy.
That Ramune's once handsome face, as everyone says, somehow has transformed into some type of ooze. He seems to be moving normally, though. But, there is a little bit... He doesn't look well. In fact, he looks like that he's had better days. So that is what you see. Okay, Phineas.
Well, doesn't this guy have a turn?
Say it again?
I think you skipped one of the enemies. This guy.
Sorry, say that one more time, please.
I think you skipped one of the enemies.
Oh, did I? Accidentally skip an enemy?
Yeah.
Oh, did I do that? Okay. Yeah, Oh, I did. Sorry about that, guys. Okay.
And then you also, and then I think Ramune's not on the.
Yeah, I'm getting it updated right now.
Thing anymore.
Oh, did I forget to put him on the list? No, I skipped him before. Okay.
No, you're good. You're good. I just had to re-roll and modify my what my thing was. So.
Okay, so I can have him go now, and then we'll do Phineas because he hasn't gone yet. Okay. So Tobias comes running up, and very, not very. I guess you could say not very focused on anything. And he's going to stop right here. And you can see him foaming at the mouth, and he is not close enough to get anybody, but he seems to be making a beeline towards Toren. Maybe he's a little bitter. So somewhere down there in his mind, that's clearly not all there. But he cannot get close enough to do anything, and he does not have anything to attack at this distance. All right, so let's go with Phineas.
Okay, Phineas is like looking around, all scared. Like he looks at the table, looking at the weapons, but then he's like, he gets real focused on the sword that was dropped over here, and he'll make like a beeline towards that to try to grab it.
Okay. So he makes a beeline, grabs the sword.
Grabs the sword, and I'm like, I'm sorry. And then I'll like, I guess hex, bonus action hex the lady here.
Okay. Let's do hex on her. This will be my hex.
And then take a good swing with the sword.
Okay. All right. So you slash at her, and you slash like across like her shoulder, across like her upper torso, and a red line forms, and she starts bleeding out of it. She's quite hurt, though not down, and she kind of folds over, doesn't fall, but she takes quite a bit of damage. Very, very not looking very good, not walking properly.
And then the ability that she has, I think disadvantage on will be strength, I guess.
Okay. Disadvantage on strength. Got it. Okay, thanks. Okay. All right. So she's going to go, and after this hit that she just got, she seems to not want to deal with Phineas anymore. So she starts to run, and triggering an opportunity attack. So go ahead and do that.
Hi.
Okay, and does that hit her? It does. And so as she runs, and this is, by the way, this is an annoying thing that Roll20 does. It always does if you roll one as as a crit, it just adds the extra. So the damage will just be the first numbers, the 12 and the 3. Okay, so she runs by, and as she's running by, you take your sword and swing around and literally slash her in half. Falls over, falls down, blood sprays on your face, and she is dead.
I'm sorry.
She is dead. Did not get to do anything, unfortunately for her. But yeah. Okay. So then this guy, seemingly not even reacting to one of his comrades just getting, sliced in half, just runs forward, makes a beeline for Irene, and he hits at Irene, and he punches wide, and that's his turn. Then this guy here also goes for Irene because she's the closest. And he also punches. And that one does land. 5 bludgeoning.
Okay, so I guess my ready action would go towards trying to actually incapacitate the guy who hit me.
Okay.
Oops. Okay, maybe not.
Okay, yeah, unfortunately that doesn't hit. You with being punched so hard, pretty hard in the face actually. It kind of so hard that you feel like you heard a tooth rattle. It throws you off balance and you don't actually get to do anything. So, or you try but you completely miss. Okay. All right, so we are on Cypress.
Okay, Cypress sees this guy attacking his therapist, and will create another bonfire under his feet.
Okay.
And he's also not a big fan of redheads, so.
You better pray our DM isn't a redhead.
My wife is a redhead, and she just hit me. And let me cast that.
You kind of deserve that there.
That's a DC 14.
Yep, hits. Oh, sorry. I have to roll for that. I have AC on the brain. Okay, dex save, right. There we go. Nope, unfortunately, he again is able to sidestep. Seems a little ready for it maybe, but yeah, able to sidestep it and does not get hit.
Great.
Anything else?
Turn.
Okay, Irene.
Okay, so I'm going to try again to just take out one of this guy's legs from underneath him.
Okay. Hits.
Sad, but yeah. So 3 points of damage as I kind of take out his knee.
This guy here, right?
The one that punched me.
Okay.
That's about me. Yep.
Okay, so and okay. All right, Toren.
All right.
That's technically isn't done, but.
So I'm going to be looking at Irene, kind of overwhelmed a little bit, so I'm going to, seeing as this guy ain't going to stop anytime soon, I'm going to go right for the face.
Yep, definitely hits. And so you're aiming your bow at his face. So you manage to, you don't do a direct brain shot, but you kind of hit him on the side of his forehead. And he sees it coming and it sticks in his forehead and he pulls it out, causing further injury because the blood splurts everywhere, gets on Irene, pretty gross, honestly. And blood is kind of dripping down his forehead and the side of his face. And there is a little bit of matter on the end of the arrow, and that is him.
What is up with these guys?
All right, Tobias. Is going to. Let's see what we'll do. Okay, so he's going to run up to his foe, and he's going to punch. So he has no weapons. None of them do. He punches wide, almost loses his footing, does not hit at all. Ramune.
Ramune is just looking around frantically, looking at himself, and he's freaking out. He doesn't know what he's going to do for it, but he sees people attacking these his colleague, and he's going to go ahead and try to shoot This individual right here with the longbow.
Okay.
His slimy hands grab the longbow and try to cock it, and he's gonna make an attempt.
Ramune, is that still you?
It looks like he's trying to say something, but he's having issues trying to form words at this time. 16?
16 definitely hits. Okay, and this shot was probably a brain shot because it hits him right through the center of the forehead, and you see his body sees up, his eyes go wide, and falls to the mat, dead. Anything else?
Yeah, he's gonna take a few steps away and end his turn.
Okay. Phineas.
I'll bonus action put the hex on this guy now.
This one has a hex on it. Let's add that.
And then I'll be like, oh, be careful, Toren. He's dangerous. And then I unknowingly sent out an Eldritch Blast at him. Oh, just take the first one. My bad.
Okay. Yeah. So, what color is your Eldritch Blast?
Probably like blue.
Okay.
Almost like the same lightning color that we saw before.
Cool. So it's like an electric blue light. Okay, so an electric blue light explodes from the hands of Phineas and nails this guy, and Tobias, and he stumbles back but doesn't fall, and he is not looking good. His clothing is singed, and it's a little burnt, but he is looking bad. But he's still up. He's still on his feet, but it seems a little bit barely.
The Eldritch Blast probably knocked me down too. It's like, I didn't realize that. What the hell was that?
And he kind of does a not really able to, like a growl, not really able to respond in human words at this point, or dwarven words, I should say. Any language that is a language that can be understood by a sentient creature, rah, 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 kind of thing. And he looks at you with murderous eyes, like he didn't like that. Okay, so this one is actually dead, because I take that one out the initiative. This one is also dead, and this one is still alive. So this one is going to again punch at Irene, and so they punch at Irene and do like this wide arcing punch, kind of like a person who was drunk would do. And the punch is done with such force and such, enthusiasm that it knocks them off their feet. They completely miss. They are prone on the ground. That's the prone symbol. And seem to have knocked their head and are slightly dazed at the moment. And that is their turn. Cypress.
Cypress will walk over to the redhead and try something else. He's going to feel his rage build at missing, and his claws his fingers are going to form into claws, and he's going to cast Primal Savagery.
Okay. Now, can you? I'm not sure what that one does. So what does that do?
It's just an attack. It's an attack roll.
Got it. Okay, yeah, that hits. All right, and these are claws, like that you're attacking with.
Yeah.
Okay, so the claws reach out, and you reach out at the bandit, and you rip out his throat with the claws, blood splurting out over you and Irene. He is dead. You hear a gargling as his last breath kind of come out and wheezes, like, and a gargle, and it stops, and he's his head is sideways and blood is coming out of his neck.
And I'll look at Irene and I'll say, we'll talk about this in our next session, eh? And that'll be my turn.
Okay.
You'll have a lot
Irene.
Okay, but that's contingent on us getting out, managing this. So it's just this fellow left, right?
Yes. Yeah. Last one.
Okay, so the tactic remained the same. I'm gonna see if I could demolish his foot.
Hits. And
Nice.
yeah, so all right. So with this, so you take the warhammer and you're going for the knees, right? Or the leg.
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay. So you swing at him and you manage to easily take his legs out. And as you're pulling the hammer back, he falls, but you don't get the hammer back quite soon enough because it comes up like kind of like a pick, and he impales himself on the hammer right in the chest, and he is dead. And we are out of initiative. They're all dead. Right at this moment, before anybody can react, it seems that whatever rubble had been blocking the entrance has been cleared, and a number of guards step in.
Oh boy.
And they look at you all, and they look at the bodies, and they say to all of you, I think you're going to need to come with us. Not in a threatening way, not in a kind of in a calm voice, seeming to maybe to bring down the chaos, possibly, is why they're speaking this way. But they say, come with us. And they look at all four of you.
I hide behind the arrow word.
Do I see him going behind the target?
Yeah, you see, because since this is like a fairly large stadium, his going behind the target is noticed, and so one of the guards comes up and says, "Come on, son, let's go."
Irene,
It was self-defense.
And he says,
I just grab him and like push them over my shoulder like a sack of potatoes.
Oh.
Yeah, it'll be fine, kid. Just calm down.
and he says, "We all saw it. We all saw it. Come on, son." And he's saying it in almost. This is a much older guard than the teenager Phineas. He's probably in his 40s or so, and he says it in an almost fatherly voice. He says, "Come on, let's go." The other guards are kind of collecting the bodies, and a couple of other guards come in and ask you all to follow them. What do you do?
Alright. Yeah, I'm kind of just lumberjack carrying Phineas right now because I'm worried he'll just run.
Okay.
Ramune's
yeah, I'm going to take a deep breath in and out and just kind of center myself. And, yeah, I'll post up a warhammer and follow that.
Okay. Anyone else?
What's that slime creature?
Ramune's walking over to one of the guards, and he's just gonna be like, guard. And he watches. He's trying to form a mouth out of his mouthless face, trying to say something. What
And the guard looks at him and he says, We don't know. But it certainly wasn't your fault. And he says, come on. And he looks a little bit put off by Ramune, but he's trying not to be judgmental. Obviously, it's not, whatever happened is not Ramune's fault. And so he seems to, be trying to be a little bit understanding of whatever's going on, and not to display like a look of maybe disgust or fear on his face. That's pretty clear. And so he says, come on. And then, so Irene, who is left? Cypress, what do you do?
I'll offer myself up quietly. I don't really say anything. I don't talk to cops.
Okay. So the group goes willingly with the guards. They don't confine you. They do. There is some walking behind you, some walking in front of you, but they don't confine you or anything like that. They're just kind of leading you. And you notice as you're walking through the town that there are a lot of other people who are also being led by guards. But there's a difference with those other people. They don't really seem to be very able to control themselves. They seem like maybe they might have had similar effects at varying degrees to your competitors in the ring. None of them are walking, 100% okay. They're all kind of like, some of them are just kind of going a little bit out of their mind. Some of them are stumbling along, but walking in ways that aren't quite normal, I guess, per se. And they lead you through the city, and they lead you to a building, and they take you to a cell. As they place you all into the cell, you see all other people in the cells next to you, and they're just all going crazy. One of the guards, as he closes the cell door, he looks at you all and he says, "You're not under arrest. This is for your protection while we sort this out."
You're lying. You always lie.
And he stands by. He ignores Phineas, and he stands by the door. Ramune, can you see?
Yes, I can.
Okay, great. Okay. And so he stands by the door. You see other people in the cells are just clawing at the cells. These people over here are clawing, trying to get at you, and are screaming, and it sounds really unsettling. Screams of fear, screams of what's going on, half words, half guttural, primal yelling. Kind of a bit of chaos in this holding area. And the guards don't really seem to be doing anything about it. They just have the people held there. And one of the guards comes to the door and he says, "There will be someone coming by soon, I'm sure." And he kind of turns his back to the group.
Oh, the executioner! We're gonna die!
I'm gonna turn to the group and say, "Alright, I know this is hardly ideal, but if you can bear with me for a second, just come a little close for me. Even you, Ramune, if it's not too uncomfortable."
He just sluggishly moves forward.
I'm gonna extend my hand out to Phineas and Cyrus and kind of encourage the others to do the same. So, I know this is strange, but just take a second. We're not going to be in trouble, I'm sure.
I chopped somebody in half.
A strange circumstance, but the responsibility it certainly can't fall on our shoulders for this. So, if you'll join me, just on counting 3 in and 3 out, we'll just take some rest. We'll be alright.
I'm kind of just like holding onto my sword, like for dear life almost.
Okay, Phineas, look at me. I need you to calm down. I need you to let go of the sword. Phineas, look at me. Come on. Give me the sword. You're gonna hurt yourself if you keep doing that.
It chose me.
I kind of look at Irene for like assistance in getting the weapon away from Phineas.
Now, Phineas, for this to work, we need to hold your hands to be able to support you properly. Now, if my maths adds up, there's 2 of us and 2 hands. So the sword won't go anywhere, just right hand to me, left hand to Toren, okay?
There's a slime creature too.
That's Ramune, but he'll be alright.
That's Ramune?
Oh boy, I think you just set him off again, Irene.
Don't worry, Ramune. Ramune, how's it going with your voice? Are you able to, many words? Alright, that's... See? It's just for Ramune, we know he just looks a bit different. Things will feel a little bit different, and that's not bad, it's just strange.
I shot a bolt of blue lightning out of my head.
Ramune pulls out a little book,
yeah.
and he pulls out a pen, and he begins to jot down a bunch of notes.
I'll actually use 1 lay of hands point to send a bunch of soothing energy through Phineas. Just so you can feel a bit of invigoration. He'll feel lighter, he'll feel warmer, he'll feel a lightness in his heart just for a brief second. Phineas, I know everything.
Sorry, Harry. I was gonna say, while she was doing that, I'm gonna take the sword out of Phineas's hand just so he can't. Just so he can't hurt himself because he's probably going to.
I will hold on to this sword for dear life.
Do you want to try to pull the sword out of his hands, like with force?
Well, I was gonna try and do it while Irene was distracting him with the lay on hands.
Okay, but you're trying to do it with a bit of force, right? While he's being distracted.
Yeah, not enough to hurt him, but enough to get it out of his hand.
Got it. Okay, let's do contested strength. Phineas with disadvantage because you are concentrating on Irene. See if he gets the sword from you.
Wow.
My sword.
Yeah. It seems like you grab the sword, but he does, although he is distracted, he does notice you and he grabs it back. This is not a violent pull. You both kind of grip it at the same time, and you're holding it in the middle. Neither of you getting the sword closer to you. What are both of your dexes?
Mine's 14.
Mine is 12.
Okay, so with kind of a quick jolt down, he manages to get it away from your grasp, Toren, and he takes it back and hugs the sword to his chest, not hurting himself, but just holds it close to him.
The sword chose me.
Okay, so as Ramune is jotting down notes, seemingly maybe having a hard time talking, you hear some chatter right outside the door. You all are sitting right by the door, and you see this guard, and he kind of looks out the door, which is open, and he steps back, and you see two individuals walk in, a man and a woman. The woman is dressed pretty formally, kind of, not in a suit, but like a nice business shirt, a high collar, very stylishly, a tall human woman, copper colored skin, and a very serious expression on her face as she kind of surveys the room. The other people who are being held there are still screaming. She does it a once over and says something to the gentleman next to her, which you cannot hear. The gentleman next to her, older man with white hair, also a human, pretty studious looking, kind of nods and says something back to her, doesn't really speak loudly. They're kind of talking that they don't want anybody to hear. And the guards kind of move aside. Some leave, and others move away. This one leaves. This one moves away. And they make kind of a loop around the room, stopping for a minute in front of each of the cells. Each time they stop, and you hear this, they say in a strong voice, or at least the man does, he says in a strong voice, "Can you respond to me?" And no one responds. "Can you respond to me?" And no one responds. And no one responds. And no one responds. Finally gets to your cell. "Can you respond to me?"
Who are you?
Yes, we can. You'll forgive my companion. He's understandably quite distraught, as we all are, given the circumstances.
Are you the executioners?
Phineas,
And-
no one's going to kill you. Calm down.
And he kind of looks at the woman next to him, and they look at each other, and he says, "Why, no, my boy. I'm Dr. Ryfen Simic. I am trying to see what's happening with this." And he looks around and kind of looks at the other people who aren't in their right minds, and he says, "Situation." And the woman raises her chin up proudly, and she says, "And I am Mare Talia Sorer." And she looks at you all, and she says, "I was in the stands, and I saw that you all were the finalists in the grand competition, and that you defended yourselves. Don't worry, you're not in trouble." And she kind of looks at Dr. Simic, and she says, "But we do need to figure out what's going on. And she kind of says this in a voice that seems like she regrets it. We may have to hold you here just a bit longer." Dr. Simic immediately speaks up and he says, "Hold them here? Talia." And she says, "Mare Sorer." And he says, "With all due respect, Male Sorer, these people haven't done anything wrong. They shouldn't be caged up like animals." And she looks at him and she says, "Well, they seem to have some sort of ability that I've only seen in alchemy. And I can't be too sure about that." And he looks at her and he says, "That's That's not their fault. Certainly you can't blame them for that. They don't know they know as little as we do. And she looks at him and she says, I understand your concern, Ryfun, but for the good of the city and for the protection of its citizens. And he looks kind of angry and he says to her, and he says, why don't you release them to my custody, per se? And he makes air quotes as he says custody. He says, I will be responsible for them. If they do anything wrong, it's on my head. Let them stay with me, and I can study their condition and figure it out. You can tell he's making this up on the spot. But he seems pleased with himself. He kind of shakes his head and says, yeah. Me and my team of scientists, we will look into what's going on, and we will figure this out, and I promise you they won't do anything. And he looks at you all and he says, right? If we release you in good faith, you won't do anything.
That's quite correct.
I say never like you're lying on your ass, but I agree with you.
And she kind of looks at him and she says, Ryfun, if one soul is injured, you will be held personally responsible for this, you understand? He says, of course I do, but it won't happen because these are normal people, are just thrust in a situation, and we need to understand their conditions. And we need to help them. Especially that one. And he looks at Ramune and he says, we need to help them.
Seems fine to me. Sorry.
And she looks at him and she says, give us a moment. They step away for maybe about 10 minutes. They leave the room and they come back. And they say, and she looks at you and she looks at Simic and she says, Dr. Simic, and she says, all right. Do you all agree to be released to Dr. Simic and to not cause any trouble?
Well, we won't cause trouble, but soon start some trouble, we will tonight.
And she kind of smirks at that and says, well, I won't fault you for defending yourself, but of course, if anything like that happens, it might have to be taken up in a court of law. And she says, what about the rest of you?
I have just as much intention as Dr. Simic as to collaborating and figuring out this odd situation.
I suppose so. If it gets me away from the executioner.
Phineas will be right here with you, alright?
Okay.
I just kind of throw Phineas over my shoulder and say, alright, so you calm down, you're not walking.
I suppose that makes sense.
And she looks at all of you and she says, okay. And she says, here are the rules, though. And these are rules true for the entire town. This town is quarantined. You may not leave this town until we figure out how to stop this from spreading. Do you agree? And she looks at Irene and she says, you may answer for the group, and if anybody opposes, speak up. Do you agree?
I can assure you our cooperation within, the normal realms of our civil liberties. We'll give a fair amount of time spent to assist with whatever research is needed within the confines of this town.
And she says, okay, you must not leave until the quarantine is lifted. And then she says, there's a curfew, and you must be in before dark, inside of a building. This applies to everyone. You may have your free reign. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, I said, yes. Given the circumstances, that might be for now. Yes.
And she shakes her head and she says, you may have your free reign of the city, and you may travel among the city as you wish, as long as you don't cause any trouble, and until we say otherwise, like any other citizen or visitor, as long as you don't leave or go out after dark. And then she shakes her head and she looks at Simic and she says, they're all yours. And she steps out. Okay. So let's do a quick switcheroo here. Back to our little thing. And there we go. Okay. So you all, as agreed, would do what you said you would do and go with Dr. Simic. He takes you to a house. He has a small house. It has a couple of spare bedrooms. It's not anything fancy, but it's okay. He offers you some bedrolls, and he offers a couple of you beds. You can decide amongst yourselves where you want to sleep, but there are 2 available beds. It's comfortable, it's free, rather than staying in an inn somewhere. And most importantly, you're away from others who cannot harass you or bother you, considering that you have attracted quite a lot of attention being in the center ring of the arena when this happened. And there you stay. So we're going to have now, at this point, time passes by. The curfew and the quarantine stay in place for about 3 weeks. During this time, you all are learning your powers. You all are learning what you can and cannot do, the limits of your powers, you're testing them. Almost daily, you're going in to see Dr. Simic and talking to him about what you can do and what you cannot do. As agreed. In this 3 weeks, what else would you like to do as you learn about your powers?
Well, I'm definitely going to be conferencing with Ramune in our free time, learning about his very unique experience, but also making sure I'm going around to everyone in turn and kind of giving them the opportunity to unpack and debrief about this whole ordeal.
Ramune is taking observation of everyone's unique and different abilities along with his own, along with practicing his creating vocal cords in his throat so he can actually speak better, so he can recommunicate like how he used to a degree. And he would be testing out the extent of his oozy body, like can he go through grates and stuff like that, or if he gets hit, how painful is it, etc., etc.
Okay, so anybody else? Anything you want to do in town? Anything you want to do with each other? Any
I want to
conversation?
try to talk to my sword.
Okay. So as much as you try, your sword doesn't seem to be answering at the moment. After that first initial conversation, your sword seems like a normal longsword. The quality, though, is incredible. It's nicer than anything that you've ever experienced. And that alone makes you very happy to have the sword, but it does not answer your call. It seems to have stopped.
Okay. Other than that, I think is food supplied to us?
So he does bring you, some normal kind of bare bones rations and stuff like that. So some soup. He is sensitive to the fact that you all are kind of stuck here. You can't go home. You are unable to really have a lot of flexibility. So he brings you soup, bread, cheese. On one of the nights, though, when you're there, he decides to cook for you all, and he makes somewhat of a decadent dessert. And Phineas, you have never had anything like this. It's a chocolate, like a chocolate cake. And go ahead and roll Constitution, because this is richer than anything you've had. And though you love it and you eat it so quickly, it's a little bit much for your stomach, which goes hungry often. So go ahead and roll for Constitution. Oh yeah, you just gobble that cake up, and doesn't make you sick, although you feel a little bit of a sugar rush. And this is something that you probably could definitely get used to. But yeah, he treats you all very kindly. He is very worried about you all, actually. He and worried in a way that he cares. He appears to be concerned with your well-being and concerned with what has happened to you genuinely. It's a nice feeling, especially for some of you who aren't used to having this type of concern shown to you. Is there anything else anybody would like to do, either in town or in conversation?
I'd like to make sure that I can get a mask of some sort, along with a cloak.
Okay.
That way I'm not frightening people when I'm in town.
And did you want to go yourself to the store?
Oh, I definitely would take someone with me.
Okay.
I'll go with it.
Okay. Okay. So, Toren and Ramune, you kind of look around. Now, this is a pretty small town. It's most known for its festival. That's like its biggest, that's its biggest claim to fame. And so it doesn't really have any weapons shops per se, because this is like a seaside town, but it does have a tailor. And so you go ahead and you walk into the store, and you walk up to the female human. She has kind of long blue hair, and it's kind of in a little bit of a bow, and she's kind of cleaning up some counters, and she looks at you, and the place is called the Angry Axe. And though the name doesn't quite fit because it's actually a tailor, and so a little bit weird, but she looks at you and she says, may I help you? And she seems a little bit taken aback by Ramune's appearance.
Yeah, we got like a mask for my friend here.
And she says,
Yeah, he kind of got turned into this. We don't really know how.
and she just looks confused for a second, and then you could see like probably the wheels in her head turning, and it's probably like, you know what, I don't want to know, and like, oh, okay. we do. We have some nice masks. There was a nice masquerade ball about a couple of weeks ago. Yes. They come into stock this time of year. And she goes to the back and she pulls out several decadent masks with feathers coming out, and like a pink one and a blue one and a bright one. And she's like, "What can any of these do?"
Ramune just kind of shakes his head.
Nothing fancy, just simple.
And she says, "Simple." She says, "Oh, I have just the thing." And she goes back and she goes back into the back again, and she comes out with a couple of masks, and one of them is brown, and it does have a feather on it. And she says, the feather can of course be removed. And one of them is black, but they're both plain. They don't have glitter or sequins or anything like that, and they cover the full face. And she says, "Would these be better?"
Ramune looks at the wooden mask, and he's going to take that one, the brown one.
And she says, "Okay." And she hands it to you. She shows it to you, and she says, "That will be 50 silver."
Ramune just kind of takes his hand, and silver coins just kind of begin to pop out of his palm through the slime. And he hands her...
Sorry, let me correct that. 5 silver. 5 silver. Sorry, go ahead.
He hands her 5 silver.
Okay. She takes the silver and says, "Thank you so much, sir." And she kind of rips the feather out. And so it's just a plain, like, brown mask. And she hands it to you. And she says, "Now, for the burly dwarf gentleman. Now, I know that you're a dwarf and that you're a big, strong dwarf, but you know, bow ties are really fashion these days, and you would look so cute with a little bow tie. What about a polka dot or green, or what do you say? What do you say, huh?
I thank her and I politely decline.
And she says, "Okay, well, I can't win them all. But, if you ever decide to come back." And she kind of gives you a little wink, and she says, "The angry axe, you can't find quality like this anywhere else." And she kind of shakes her head, and she says, "Is there anything else I can get you to?"
Do you have big cloak?
And she says, "Oh, of course. And she kind of goes back to the back, and she pulls out like a big kind of it looks like a king's robe with like animal print around. And she looks at it first and she says, "Wait, plain, right?" She says, "Plain."
Something basic, please.
She says, "Gotcha." And she tosses the cloak aside, and she comes out with just a plain brown, like dark brown cloak. And she says, "How about this?"
That will do. How much?
And she hands it to you, and she says, 5 copper.
Very well.
I'll put the 5 copper down for her.
Right? She takes the 5 copper, and she says, and she looks at Toren, and she picks up like the kind of the ostentatious animal print cloak, and she says, And
I just like sigh, and I'm just like, "No, thank you, ma'am."
And she says, "Well, you have the opportunity to be the most stylish dwarf in Ardenborn, but I understand." And she says, "Beauty is," and she kind of thinks back, like she's trying to come up with a word, and she's like, "Beauty is adjustment. You know, the newest fashions, and she starts going on this long, like, very uninteresting and frivolous tirade of fashion and style and this and that, and then she kind of catches herself and she says, anything else?
Ramune just kind of shakes his head no.
And she says, well, thank you for coming to the Angry Axe. And she takes out a slip of paper and she says, please take our surveys to say how good of a customer service job I did. And she hands you both these like little parchments and she says, 5 if I was great. And don't worry about the other numbers. And she says, thank you, come again. And she like kind of moves away as she like thrusts the little papers in her hand. So like it's like a little questionnaire with the survey. And she says, your answers are completely anonymous, of course.
Ramune takes out his pen and he just puts a 5 for everything as the paper is now getting soaked into his ooze. And then he hands it back.
And she says, oh, thank you. And she like tosses it in like and she kind of, it's holding it by like the tip of her finger and her thumb, and she puts it in like a what looks like a box with a little slit in it. And she says, I wasn't supposed to see that, but you won't tell on me, will you? And she looks at Toren expectantly.
Toren just does the same just to get out of here. He's just done with this right now.
And she takes it and drops it in, and she says, all right, come back soon. Okay, so I'm assuming y'all leave the store at that point, trying to escape from this kind of slightly annoying or maybe a lot annoying girl who is trying to dress you up. And okay, so Ramune puts on your cloak. Do you put on your cloak and your mask as you leave the store?
Yes, I do.
Okay, great.
You know, Ramune, I am very glad you got your mask, but I am never going shopping in this town. I've met lepers less annoying.
I don't think she bad. She tried to sell that her job.
Yeah, I know, but there's such a thing as not a very good salesperson, and she is the embodiment of that.
Ramune just kind of shrugs, then he starts heading back to the house.
And thank goodness there is a noticeable difference. You're not getting stared at. I mean, it doesn't seem... People don't even really seem to be noticing the mask at all. They're just kind of not really paying attention to you all, which is probably what Ramune wants, I would assume.
Correct. That's why he didn't go for the flashy cloak or the flashy mask.
Right, exactly. the flashy masquerade mask and the animal print cloak was not on the menu today. And so, yeah, so you all head back to the house. Anything else you wanted to do while you're back in town, or did you just want to head back?
Is there? I was like, I was probably gonna look and see if there's like a shooting range of which I can like practice.
Is also
there? So, oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say also, is there a store that might sell general goods, specifically like healers kits or anything like that?
Yes, so there is a general store that does sell healers kits. There is also there's like a target practice store that people, or range I should say, that people use for bows, because there's lots of hunters that live here, mostly, possibly some axes as well, but yeah, there are definitely both of those things.
Would that general store sell a set of smith tools?
I'm sorry, say that again, please.
Would that store be selling a set of smith tools?
Yes. Yes, it would. So
Okay.
what we'll do with the basic items is that we don't have to go through all of those, because I know you all want to get like your starting items. So all of the items that I looked through all your character sheets. All of the items, including like the healer, I think the healer's kit was pretty standard stuff, if I remember correctly.
It's something you gotta buy separate.
Okay. So we'll say that you were able to get all of your starting items, except for weapons and armor. We'll get to that in a bit, but all of your starting items from various stores around, the city. And the way that this kind of played out was that through your conversations and kind of through your work with Simic, Dr. Simic, you kind of talked through what you may need, what may help you, as you kind of gauge your progress with your abilities. Based on his suggestions, based on your observations, you kind of figure out what would work best for you. And so you all managed to buy all of your general items from various stores except for your weapons. So we'll just take care of it that way if that's okay. And so then with Toren, do you just want to go to the range? What do you want to do there? Do you just want to shoot arrows or axes? Do you want to have conversations with people, or what do you want to do there?
Yeah, I'll go there to practice, but if there's other people there, I'll try to challenge someone.
Okay. So it is pretty empty, actually. It seems that people are a bit spooked by what happened. So you're easily able to get a lane. You start throwing your axe at the lane, and you're doing okay. There's a couple of other people. What does happen though is as you're throwing your axe, a person walks in, and she doesn't seem to be focused on anyone in particular. But if you've ever heard of, well, you guys have heard of this. I don't know. I'm saying it as if you haven't, but she says in a voice with kind of the cadence of what would be best described as maybe a town crier. This is what she looks like. Drag her. Come on, roll 20. Do your thing. There we go. Okay. So it's a gnome with a little pink mohawk, and she kind of looks at you all, and she says, she looks at the people down the ranges, and she says, "Hello." And she looks down and she says, Would you be interested in coming to the next meeting of the Golden Griffins?" And she says, "We're now recruiting for membership." And she has the flyer in her hand, and she hands it to the first person who takes it. She hands it to a second person who takes it. And then she comes in front of you, Toren, and she says, "Would you be interested in going to a meeting of the Golden Griffins?" And she shows you a flyer. What do you say?
I take the flyer and I read through it.
So, the flyer, which is in big bold letters, someone has done calligraphy, and they have written in very fancy script, "The Golden Griffins." And then down in smaller script, the flyer says, "Are you troubled by what's happening lately? Come to our next Golden Griffins meeting, and all may be answered." And there are drawings of moon and stars and things like that, and some astrological signs. And she says, will you make it?" And she says, "We have our next meeting tomorrow."
I might have some friends I want to bring to this. Is that okay?
And she says, "Oh, of course, the more the merrier." And she kind of shakes her head, and then she heads out. And you see her post a flyer, hang it on the wall with a what would be equivalent to a wooden stake kind of tack thing. and she hangs it to the wall so that other people can see that it's coming in. And then she goes outside of the range, and she has a bunch more flyers in her hand. So, assuming that she's going to hand them out to other people.
This might be worth showing to everyone else. I'll stop and head back to the house.
Okay. All right, so Toren heads back to the house. Now, would anybody have a reason not to be there? Is there anything that anybody else would have wanted to be doing in town? And this would be so you guys have had kind of a a full day because you went to various shops looking for your items. So this would be close to the curfew, probably like 6 o'clock p.m. The curfew would be equivalent to like maybe a 7 or 8 when it starts to get dark.
No, nothing post-curfew. Yeah, too close to it for Irene.
Okay. So, go ahead. Sorry. Go ahead, Irene.
Oh, I was going to say, she'd probably head back and, I forgot to mention, during the course she might meditate and see if she gets in touch with that voice during her reflections or meditations.
Mm-hmm.
But, yeah, cross that bridge later.
Okay. So she does get in touch with the voice. So Irene is sitting and meditating to herself. She's breathing deeply as she has instructed everyone else to do. She's concentrating on that feeling that she had earlier. And you're probably doing something equivalent to praying, right?
Yeah, I'd say kind of just opening myself up to the universe for meditation.
Okay, great. Okay. And so you clear your mind and you open up your hands, and the voice speaks to you and it says, "My child." And it says, in a very kind and compassionate tone, "I'm so happy you have found me." And it says, "Do you wish for my guidance, my dear Irene?"
I have many questions and not a very good place to start. But I'm willing to listen if you're willing to provide.
And the voice, which sounds feminine to you, says, "I may not be able to tell you very much, my child, but I will tell you what I can. But know that I will protect you. What are your questions, my dear Irene?"
Well, who are you? What are you?
And she says, "I am your guide. I am your leader." And she looks at you, or not looks at you, sorry. And she says to you, "And I am always going to be there for you." And she says, "I'm afraid I can't say much more than that at this time. But you will learn more. There are reasons that I must, and forgive me, my dear, hold back. But through me, you will find redemption." She puts emphasis on the word redemption. And she says, "As long as you do what's right, I promise you these questions will be answered in time."
Okay. I suppose there's not much I could do about that. Okay.
And she says, "As always, Irene, allow your heart to guide you. Your heart will guide you. I can feel that your heart is moving in a way that will benefit us all. Be that rock for your comrades. And the voice slowly fades out and she says, I hope you'll call on me soon again, my dear. And it fades out.
All right, cool.
All right, anybody else? So I'm gonna have then we're gonna have Toren come back to the house. Everybody's gonna be there. And Dr. Simic has just served you all some broth and beef and bread. It's a bowl of broth and be very simple meal and some bread, but very filling. He served it all to you, and so Toren, as you come back, you see everybody kind of eating their food, and there you go.
All right. Yeah, guys, while I was out at the target range practicing, this weird little gnome lady showed up and handed me this flyer. And I kind of put it down on the table for everyone to read. Hey, Doctor, have you ever heard of these golden ribbons before?
And Dr. Simic looks by, he says, oh yes, I'm quite familiar with them. And he says, they are a paranormal club, and they have gotten a lot more popular, as you would imagine, since whatever happened. He says, I quite often actually go to their meetings. I'm going to the one tomorrow. I try to make sure that there isn't too much misinformation, especially misinformation that will be dangerous. That's spread in their meetings, but sometimes I give scientific-based talks that are combined with that kind of are relevant. That's what I meant to use. Relevant to what they're speaking about that day. They talk about strange things that they've seen, and they talk about creatures that they may have come into contact with, and a little bit kooky, but harmless enough. And he says, I'll be there if you all want to join me.
It kind of sounds like a cult, but I'll come.
Are you a member?
And he says, no, I'm not a member. And he kind of laughs to himself and he says, no, I just kind of go I kind of want to see what they're talking about. And, kind of, sometimes they ask me to talk on various things that I know of. And, I represent the Allorian Conservation Alliance, every time I go. And he would have told you all by now that he is the chief scientist of the Allorian Conservation Alliance, and that is a government organization that is concerned with species, both sentient and non-sentient, preserving species. They are very involved in taking care of and protecting endangered species, both sentient and non-sentient. They do a lot of work with the wild, quote-unquote, tribes that live throughout the continent to make sure that they're okay, that they're not being exploited. They do the same for animals. And so he would have already explained this to you. And he kind of looks up and he says, and he kind of reacts to what Cypress has just said, and he says, they're a little strange, but they're harmless enough. And he says, I do my best to keep them in check, but no, I am not a member. And he kind of looks at you all and he says, so you'll join me.
I don't know. That sounds like a bad group of people.
And he says, he looks at Phineas and he says, "You're a little nervous, aren't you, boy? All the time."
I mean, yeah, kind of like a weird explosion thing happened. Like not too long ago.
And he looks at him and he looks at Phineas and he shrugs and he says, "Well, you're welcome to stay behind. Anybody who wants to come with me may come." And he says, "But you can't be scared of your own shadow forever, boy." And he looks at you and he says, "You are quite powerful, and no reason to be afraid."
I only got the sword though. That's like all I got.
And he says, "The sword, yes." And he looks at his hands and he says, "And these?" And he kind of holds his hand out like in a motion, like he's casting a spell. Of course, he doesn't have the ability, so nothing comes out. He would have been working with you all throughout the weeks to kind of observe what you can do. So he's well aware of what you can do, Phineas, and he says, "You just have to get some self-confidence, boy." And he kind of claps you on the back and he says, "But you're more than welcome to stay here." And he says, would anybody else like to come with me?
I would love to observe others and see what they entail. Be interesting.
And he kind of shakes his head with understanding and he says, "Yes." And he says, I understand, maybe to help you kind of learn how to get back to where you were. And he says, "I hope we can do something about this." And he looks at you and says, "That is, if you want to. Maybe you like how you are. I don't know. Sorry, I don't mean to offend."
Meh.
He says a little bit sheepishly, and he says,
Honestly,
and he says,
this new experience, it good to understand. Practice make better.
and he kind of shakes his head, and he says, "Well, that's the spirit. I'm glad that you have a positive outlook on it all. It's a bit difficult given the sudden event that has caused it." And he kind of looks at the rest of you and he says, "Well, I'll be leaving tomorrow to go to this meeting at 11. And I suggest, if you're coming with me, you either come with me at 11 a.m. or you don't come long after that, because trust me." And he kind of looks at you all and he says, "There will not be very many seats. And if you want to sit down, you need to get there early. So," and he kind of says, "I'm going to go ahead and turn in, and I will see you all in the morning." And he kind of goes off and goes into his room. And like I said, it's early. It's not very late, but there obviously is a curfew, so you can't be out much longer. Is there anything else anybody would like to do before bed?
I'm good. I'm covered, I think.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, I'm fine.
Yep.
Okay, so we're going to head to the next day. You all get up and get to your morning routines. And Dr. Simic comes up. He has like a nice freshly pressed shirt. And, Dr. Simic is a scientist. He doesn't dress up per se, but you can tell by his appearance that he's dressed a little bit nicer than normal. So we're talking like a white pressed shirt that's, perfectly clean. A lot of times the shirts are dirty because he's kind of getting into the dirt and like kind of doing experiments on things. But it's clean and, it's nice, and his hair is brushed back nicely, and he has on some fresh pants and shoes and not scuffed at all. And he comes into where you all are, and he says, "Okay, I'm about to leave, so would anybody like to come with me?"
Ramune.
I'll step up and follow him.
Ramune does as well.
I mean, 11's a little early to be getting up to be doing stuff, but I guess it's worth it.
Okay, now is Phineas going to come?
I don't know. Who else is going? Is everyone going?
I kind of just pick up Phineas again like a sack of potatoes. It's just like, yep, we're going, boy.
Oh boy.
Okay, so it sounds like everyone is going. Okay.
Ramune vigorously jots down the fact that Toren is always picking up Phineas like that, like a married couple.
Is that what married couples do?
On their wedding day. But with those two, it's always a wedding day.
You're like, is this the common?
Interesting
Ask your wife.
behavior.
Okay. All right. So it sounds like everybody's going to go. So with that, Toren throws Phineas over his shoulder. Phineas doesn't seem to protest too much. And
he's pretty light, so he probably can't use put up that much money.
True. He doesn't get very much to eat. Yeah, which is why I'm not even making you roll for this. He doesn't get very much to eat, so he's pretty skinny. That is very true. And so Dr. Simmet kind of looks and just like, okay, that's how they travel. And he leads you all out, and he takes you all to through the city. You're getting a little bit of kind of strange looks, but it's as if, and meaning with Phineas being carried, but it's kind of as if people are a little bit desensitized to weird things at this point. I mean, they have seen a lot in the past few weeks, and they are not as many weird looks as you probably would have gotten 3 weeks ago during the festival. And you kind of like walk through a market, a fish market. You have the smells of fresh fish and seafood kind of wafting through the air. This is a seaside town after all. You walk by some harbor and the docks and all of that. And you all make your way to just a plain looking red kind of brick building. But it does have what looks to be like a mast sticking out the top of it, and it's kind of fashioned in kind of a cool way to kind of resemble part of a cabin of a ship. And he Dr. Simic opens the door and puts his hand out, leads you all in. And although you guys are early, you guys are about 30 minutes early for this meeting, because it starts at 11:30. It is absolutely packed. It's already standing room only, and Dr. Simic is like, man, I guess we weren't early enough. And Toren, you see the gnome lady with the little pink hair in the front, and there's like a podium, and there is a megaphone on top of it, and she is kind of greeting people as they come in and kind of nodding, and she sees you and she's like, oh, and she like raises her hand and waves, kind of seems to be happy that you came. And she kind of ushers people in. People are mingling. And it doesn't seem to be anything too out of the ordinary in terms of the way people are acting. Maybe a little bit on edge. After like a few minutes, though, she kind of raises her hand and motions for the crowd to be quiet. And there are unfortunately no seats available. The seats are all taken, kind of in like a classroom style. And so y'all kind of have to stand on the back. And Dr. Simic comes into the front, and he sits in a chair that is parallel to her at her podium, like he's going to get up and maybe speak. And she turns and she picks up the megaphone, and she says to everyone, let me make her bigger. Here we go. And she says to everyone, hello, one and all. And she says, thank you for coming to this meeting of the Golden Griffins. I'm Shamba, and I'm the president of this chapter of the Golden Griffins. And she looks around and she says, I see quite a few new faces, so let me take this moment to give you a little bit of a rundown of our organization. And she kind of looks and she's commanding of the room. People are listening. People are engaged, and she says, "The Golden Griffins were founded about 10 years ago by a group of supernatural enthusiasts, and all around the world, we observe supernatural." She says it in a tone that's kind of spooky-ish to her. Supernatural happenings and unusual events. And a couple weeks ago, or about 3 weeks ago, we had the most unusual event of them all. And she says, now, what we do is that nobody talks over each other. And now she's talking like a kindergarten teacher, which is slightly annoying, but it is what it is. And she says, nobody talks over each other. We want everybody to get a chance to speak if they want and to share if they want. And she picks up this big wooden stick and she says, here's the sharing stick. And she raises it above her head and she says, we're going to have sharing first, and I want you all to talk about what you have been observing since this event has happened. And she says, do I have any volunteers? And about 5 people raise their hand. Do any of you raise your hand?
Ramune raises his hand.
Okay. Ramune is kind of in the back. Oh, anybody else in the group? Raise their hand. Okay, so we'll go with Ramune. Okay, so Ramune's kind of in the back, so she's kind of like working her way, kind of around the room. So she hands it to the first person. And the first person, he stands up and he looks to be like he's wearing clothes he looks like a farmer. He's a much older gentleman, probably in his maybe he's human. The city is mostly human, you've noticed. And he says in kind of a old gravelly voice, he says, yes, I noticed that there were some wolves exhibiting some strange behavior. They were circling and they seemed to be coordinated, and then they not like wolves normally, but they tried to attack my sheep, and then I saw, and he takes his hands and he makes a huge, the biggest space that he can by extending his arms out completely, and he says, there was one that was this big, and he says, and it had sharp fangs and this, and he gives this description of a wolf with dripping fangs and with wild eyes, and that's 3 times the size of a normal wolf. And he says, and it got some of my sheep, but I managed to barely make it alive myself. And you hear a little bit of a murmur in the crowd, and she takes the stick back and she says, we've been hearing about a lot of reports of animals exhibiting strange behavior. And she said, our very own Dr. Simic is going to speak about that soon. And she takes the stick and she gives it to the next person. And it cycles through the other 3. They have fairly similar stories. One talks about a giant goat. One talks about a giant, leopard. And one talks about a giant bear. And then finally she gets to Ramune. And because you're in the very back, you go last, and she hands you the stick.
Thank you.
I grab it.
I have been...
And she says...
Oh, go ahead.
What? And she says, and what have you observed?
I've seen a man shoot lightning in the form of a ball from his hands. I saw a woman irradiate beams of pure light into another. And I notice an unusual occurrence in social behavior between a larger, stout male and a skinny male, where the larger, stout male used the skinny male as luggage, as throwing them over his shoulder, as though some part of mating ritual or object of use. It was interesting and different.
And if the party's hearing, each one of you kind of gets a sense. He's talking about you.
The party would definitely hear, because she has also, I didn't say this, but she's also handed you the megaphone to say this to the room, so the room can hear.
So,
anybody react?
Toren's just laughing at just how wrong that statement was.
Now I'm curious if Ramune has never seen gay people before.
Well,
smart slime.
So he definitely would have. Everybody would have.
Ooh.
It's not a thing. There's no prejudice against any type of same-sex couples in this world. The only prejudice that exists, so there's no like darker skin, racial, or anything like that. The only prejudice that exists is between the races like dwarves and, whatever, elves or whatever. So yeah, so it wouldn't even be a thing.
Yeah, it was more so the observation because he's witnessed this twice now, at the very least, if not more, of Toren just picking up Phineas without Phineas saying a word and just throwing him over his shoulder and walking away. It's like, that's strange because he's never seen anyone else do that.
It definitely answers her question because that is exactly what she asks. So that is a fair response. She didn't say supernatural; she said strange, right? And so yeah, that can go a million different places. Anybody else have anything to say about his comments? So
I'll raise an eyebrow, but I mean there's nothing too far from the truth on my end. So.
So she kind of looks at you all and she says, "Very interesting." And she says to Ramune, "And where is this man and woman and men who are involved in this kind of ancient mating dancing thing that I would love to observe, by the way, as the president of the Golden Griffins, but who are these people? Can you tell us where they are? Can you, maybe we can invite them to our next meeting."
I don't disclose my subjects' identities.
And she says, well, fair enough, I suppose. And she says, if I see them though, I will keep a lookout. And she says, and she kind of reaches out for the stick and says, "Do you have anything else to say about your observations?"
No. And I hand the stick back, now a little slimy.
And she kind of says, "Thank you." And she says, she like wipes it off on like her kind of pants, and she takes it back and she says, "So, this is a new one, everyone, to our meeting. Strange ritual mating dances that are done late at night and maybe in the dawn and during the day, and who knows what strange rituals they're doing." And she completely like takes what you said to this whole other level, saying things that you didn't even say about maybe they're calling to the moon and maybe they're trying to let out an ancient demon, like all these wild theories. You have no idea where she got this from. And she talks about the woman with the light, and she adds a theory about maybe she's the sun, and the person with the light shooting out of his hands, and another wild theory about maybe he just has like the lightning that had struck earlier, maybe he has harnessed that and is going to attack the city again. Just this ridiculous long type of kind of tirade on all of that. And everybody is so engaged in what this gnome is saying, and she comes to the front and she says, "Okay, now everybody calm down." And the crowd is like oohing and ahhing, and she says, "Okay, so we are going to have now Dr. Simic speaking to the room. Everybody give him a round of applause, and everybody claps. Dr. Simic kind of gets up and kind of, he's trying not to like roll his eyes, or he looks a little bit like irritated by all the stuff she just said. And he says, yes, hello. And he says, I am Dr. Rapin Simic, and I am pleased to be here. And he says, always a pleasure to go to meetings of the Golden Griffins. And he starts to talk about some things that have been happening. He talks about, in a much more scientific way, about how the behaviors of animals have changed. Before, and what he's observed, before this event, the animals were regular animals. They were wolves, they were bear, they were sheep, deer, whatever. But now they seem to be acting erratically and attacking. And since this event has happened, they have made it really dangerous for people to even leave the city. They have been attacking, well, not the city because nobody's left, but other cities. So they have been attacking caravans, and they have been attacking people. And so people don't really go out as much anymore because these animals have kind of, their behavior has been escalating and has been becoming more and more odd. He goes into quite a bit of detail about that and things that he's observed and notes that he's taken. You can see him reading from like a kind of a tattered journal where he's taking a lot of notes. And he's explaining it to the crowd. And he says, he also explains that this, whatever has happened, is definitely not confined to the city. It seemed to have happened in all of the cities across the land. And it has affected people differently. And he did say, without naming you all, but he did say that there are people who have seemed to have gained abilities. He explained that that day when the lightning happened, there were a lot of people who seemed to not have been able to handle the strike, but some were. And some have not, some have gone mad, and some have been killed, and some have gained power, and they're trying to sort it out. He then explains that the curfew is going to be lifted, and the quarantine is going to be lifted because they have established that these happenings are not just confined to Ardenborn, that they're all over the world. He seems concerned, slightly scared, but he expresses his intent to look into what's going on, and the intent of the Allorian Conservation Society to not only look into what's going on, but to protect those who have gained powers through no fault of their own, but also to protect citizens from this strange new world that you all find yourselves in. He explains that the curfew is going to be lifted, the curfew and the quarantine are going to be lifted in a few days, but that unfortunately, although people will be able to leave the city, they will not be able to enter new cities at this time without an official ID that they will have to acquire through a registration process that has been enacted by the government within the past 3 weeks. And so while you can leave, you can't enter other cities. There are some small villages that you can enter, but a lot of the major cities, unfortunately, at this moment, cannot be entered without this ID. And so the crowd kind of groans, and you hear someone shout from the back, "That is a violation of our rights!" And Simic kind of calms the crowd and he says, "I'm sorry, don't blame the messenger." And he says, "And I agree."
I look at Toren's like, we have rights?
And I'm just like, oh my. I look at Irene's like, we need to have a chat with him.
Yeah, no, I see the knowing look from Toren, and I start planning out how exactly we're gonna sensitize Phineas to the world.
So, as the meeting comes to a close, Dr. Simic explains kind of how the curfew will work, that once the curfew is lifted and once the quarantine is lifted, you'll have to go through this registration process. He explains it to the group or to the room. I mean, not just to you guys, to the room. People are grumbling. They're upset. A lot of people are away from home, and they've been stuck in Ardenborn for 3 weeks and can't travel back home. And because they traveled to come to the festival, and those people are definitely not happy, as they can't even get into their own cities. And he kind of takes it all in stride. He understands. And as the meeting comes to a close, he immediately approaches the group and he says, "I have a proposal. I would. We need to go somewhere where we can talk, if that would be okay."
Okay.
And he kind of like motions you forward. And the meeting kind of filters out. He leads you all to a place where you've been before. Oh, sorry, Ramune. I don't have your token on here. Give me a sec. Let me fix this, you guys. Give me 1 second. Gotta get that all sorted. There we go. Okay. Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There we go. Okay. So he takes you to a place where you've been before. It's his office, and his office is in the main government building, down the hall from the Mayor Taliasaur, who you had met when this happened. The building is a ship that has been raised, that has been fashioned into an office building. And you all are ushered to some seats. You've been here before. And usually to have conversations and to kind of talk about, what you have been going through, what you've been doing, and all of that. And he looks at all of you and he says, "So this curfew is being lifted." And he says, "I have a proposal." And he looks at all of you and he says, "You have amazing abilities, and I really want to study it a bit longer. But you are not lab animals. And I don't want to give off the impression that you are being treated as such." And he says, "So here's my proposal. And I think it might work for the benefit of us all." And he pulls out a piece of paper and a parchment. And he says, "I would like to hire you to work for the Allorian Conservation Society Alliance. And what you would do is we would pay you to investigate what's been happening with the animal. And in return, in addition to investigating what's happening with the animals, you would also report to me, as you feel comfortable, of course," he kind of says very kindly, "the changes that you're experiencing. So I can pay you to keep me updated while not giving off the appearance that you are being studied." And he unfolds the paper, and it is a contract, which I will show to all of you in a second. Here it is. All right. So, so what I'm about to show you actually isn't the contract, but we'll talk about that. So he says, so basically the contract, outlines that the Allorian Conservation Alliance will pay you for looking for or investigating strange happenings with animals. They will pay you 5 gold per mission, per se, or per investigation, I mean. And that's 5 gold per person per investigation. He explains the reason why the pay is higher is because they've tried with other people and they haven't quite succeeded. And so because this is dangerous work, they have to pay you for it. And he has gotten the approval to hire a group of specialists to do this. You would be contractors, you would be independent contractors. And he explains that if you are able to bring back any samples of the animals that you investigate, there may be bonuses available. And he kind of takes out the last page, and it's like an appendix. And if you look down in handouts, this is the contract. And so they have a list of animals that they're looking for. They want you to report back the behavior and to bring back samples as you can get them. And he kind of pushes this aside and he says, and another advantage that I may be able to give you. And he says, because you are working for the government, I may be able to fast track your IDs as independent contractors. I can get you a government issued ID so you can freely travel in the cities. It'll take me a few days to a week, but it's much longer than and he looks kind of far away, and he says, probably month that it'll take the other folks with all the administrative backup that will undoubtedly be in the government system. And he says, so it will work for us all. And he says, how do you all feel about this?
I suppose that's fine.
Do the subjects need to be alive, or do you want dead for samples, or just remnants of them?
He looks at Ramune and he says, good question. And he says, because this is quite dangerous work, I won't require them to be alive. However, if you are able to bring them back alive, I would be appreciative. But whatever you can do, your safety is the most important thing to me.
Can I do an insight check on that?
Yes, absolutely.
Basically, I'm looking at his facial expressions, his movements. I'm trying to ascertain if it seems like he honestly cares about our safety or not, or has an alternative motive.
I will also do this.
I'm a sucker for a pretty face, even an old one at that.
Okay. So the way that I do insight, some DMs do it like this, or any roll like this, is that I have the NPC roll against you. So, you may not necessarily fail if you get a low roll. It depends on what they roll. Okay, so go ahead and do that. Okay, so Ramune, you kind of look at him and you look at his face and you can't really tell. He seems earnest, but it's kind of hard for you to tell where he's coming from. It seems pretty neutral to you. Phineas, on the other hand, you're although you're a bit of a scaredy cat, you are a bit street smart. You have observed a lot of people. You spend a lot of time, kind of in the corners of society as an invisible person that people don't notice, and you've watched people a lot. And Irene, you as well. You have counseled people. You have really been able to ascertain how the human mind and feeling and psyche works. And to both of you, he seems sincere. His emphasis on the word "your safety" is very strong, and it's consistent with what the kindness that he's been showing you all throughout this entire time. That's been very difficult for all of you. In fact, Irene, you happen to know that he has, and you know this, the other people don't really know this. The reason you know this is because you kind of overheard him kind of grumbling to himself sometime within the past 3 weeks. But you do know that he has been getting a bit of flack, actually, for taking you guys in, with people who are a little bit concerned. And so he's done this at personal risk a bit. And so you trust that he is probably being sincere.
All right, Doctor. We do appreciate the lengths that you've gone, not just today, but in general as well, and to the others. Well, I suppose case by case we can assess the sentience of these animals and work from there, but of course nothing to jeopardize our safety, of course.
And he says, of course. And he says, you can choose to decline any assignment that I give you. You are, after all, independent contractors. And he hands you all 5 copies of the contracts. And he says, forgive me, I know that this seems presumptive, but I've been thinking about this quite a lot. And I really have... I think that this would be a good matchup for both of us with mutual benefit. And so I took the liberty of preparing these contracts. I hope you don't take offense.
I'll say, I'll quit my successful job to go do this for you. With complete sincerity.
And he kind of raises his eyebrows and he says, he doesn't know quite what to make of what you said, but he does hand you a contract.
I mean, this is probably the most money I make in my entire life, so yeah.
I'm
right.
excited to see others who may be like me and how they interact. It will be glorious.
And Ramune just signs.
Do you get like the paper all soggy?
Oh yeah, you know he does. He has to make sure to watch too where he puts his hand, because otherwise he'll smear the ink.
The ink does get a little smeared, but it's readable.
I'll go ahead and sign as well.
Okay, Irene, great. And Irene, there's definitely a post office that you can go to for sure. Does anybody, let's talk about the people who don't sign. Does anybody have an objection to this and that they want to voice, Simic?
Not really.
Okay. All right, so it sounds like this is a kind of a speak now or forever hold your peace situation. So it sounds like everybody's up for it.
Well, as long as the contract doesn't say that we're signing away our souls for something like that, or anything crazy.
So, yeah, the contract doesn't obligate you to do these missions. The contract basically states that, that you can receive missions, you can accept them or decline them. This is what they will pay, and this is, what they want you to do. He also, I forgot to say this, he's also offering you basic supplies for the missions. So he offers you weapons and armor, which are your starting weapons and armor that have been donated. Now these aren't, they're average weapons and armor, so they're, your starting equipment. These things, he managed to talk someone into donating some supplies and someone in the city. And so understanding what your abilities are, he was able to procure the the weapons and armor that you would use, and he gives them all to you. Also, he has offered basic supplies, so he's gonna give you all a cart and like kind of an old mule, one mule. Can't carry too much, but probably like average, maybe slightly below average loads. And this is being borrowed, by the way. Not the armor and weapons; those are yours. But the mule and the cart are borrowed. He does want those back. Okay, so if everybody signs, we're just about at 3, so we'll wrap it up here. If everybody signs the contracts, he will tell you about your first assignment, and we will close. So he takes back all the contracts, and he says, "Thank you very much." And he says, "Okay," and he says, "Well, I do have an assignment that I did want to tell you about." And he says, "And there will be more to come." And he kind of sits back in his chair and looks around the room, and he says, "There have been reports of eyes in the forest. Yellow eyes, and nobody knows what they are, and they have appeared and disappeared and run, and nobody has quite been able to track what they are." And he pulls out a compass and he hands it to Irene. He thinks that Irene is probably the person who he has no idea, but he thinks Irene might be the person who is best with it. And he hands it to Irene, and he says, "So outside of the city," and he gives the general direction, and he said, "This is where they've been spotted." And he says, "They're clearly some type of beast, but if you could look into that and see if you can figure out what it is, and if possible, if you can bring it back to me alive or dead, I would be most grateful if you choose to accept." And he kind of nods his head. And he looks at you all expectantly.
All right, I'm just taking some notes as he says this. I just push up my glasses and kind of nod along. I put the compass somewhere very safe.
Okay. And we will close right there. All right. So that is the end of session 1.
Nice.
Nice.
Thank you, guys. Okay, so what we're going to do